the information that we learned at our Sage night on the night of the PTA movie, and several requests came in to replicate that, so I'm going to replicate it in this conversation. I hope that you're able to see what I'm able to see on the screen. So this year, myself and Mrs. Lightfoot met with the kids and we presented this PowerPoint presentation, and I felt like it would be a good idea to share it with you as well so that you can see the importance of SAGE to our students and the importance of assessments in general. Because if you're like us, we are completely assessed out. And you can see on this screen we have so many tests. Seriously. We have the days is given and the Dibbles oral reading. Days begins in grade 3, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then Dibbles oral reading fluency is given by the State Office of Education. It is a mandatory test. Pretty quick. But it also carries a lot of weight when the state says that such a percentage of students are reading at grade level. They use Dibbles as that signifier. The state also requires us to do SAGE, and because of that, Viewmont purchased this program called EDAMS. It's called Educator Assessment Data Management System. It helps us create tests that look very sagey, for lack of a better word. The district also got a grant for iReady, and I know you might have a lot of questions about iReady, and I can address those in emails if you'd like. And then in addition, there are all those quizzes and spelling tests and everything else. And I know that most of you are my age, and there are so many tests out there, seriously. And I looked at this cartoon and I thought this was really funny. The sign on the door says test today, and the kids are all saying, is this the actual test or a practice test? I think it's the pre-test to the practice test. It could be the post-test to the pre-practice test so they know we understand this form of the test. Or is it the post-practice test before the pre-test to the actual test? And honestly, that's exactly what it feels like. And my message here today is we get it. We get that there are a lot of tests being given, but the way we use the test is what's really, truly important. And that's what I want to chat about today. A good test helps teachers explain what students already know. And a really good test would help teachers determine what you still need to know and what students still need to learn. And so we do give a lot of tests, and we're doing that to see if students have achieved mastery in a concept. And some tests are easier than others, some are harder than others, but we certainly want to make sure that when we go into SAGE season, that our kids are prepared and know what to expect. I want to talk for a minute on opt-out. You can opt out your student from all of the SAGE tests. That's a little scary to us because as educators, because opting out, even though it says it doesn't count against us, it doesn't count against us for participation rate, but it does count against us when it comes to the PACE report card. And the PACE report card is where the grades come from. So when you hear on the news that a school got A, B, C, D, or F, part of that comes out of the parents who opt out of SAGE automatically are considered a 0 in that PACE reporting. So that's a little bit scary for us. And my message to you is that kids can do hard things, and we are giving them all of the tools that they need to be able to take the test. And it's not easy, but we are going to break down the SAGE exam so that they can take the test. And I'm going to walk you through that in this presentation. We shared this with the students, and we said the cartoon has a bird and a monkey, a penguin, an elephant, and a goldfish, and the examiner says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And we need to make sure that our students are taking that test seriously, because if we teach everyone the same way, we're going to miss an opportunity to teach kids the way they learn. So they might give us the wrong data, like this goldfish is going to give us the wrong data about their tree climbing abilities. And we might say that to a teacher, well, Mr. Goldfish needs extra tree climbing classes, needs extra tree climbing work, needs extra tree climbing homework. The teacher needs to stay over for 2 hours after school to do tree climbing skills. And the problem is that our goldfish is not equipped to climb the tree like a monkey would be. And I think most of our kids are monkey, no pun intended, and that they might just need some skill development to make sure that they can climb that tree successfully. But we need to make sure that the teachers are getting the right data. I know that teachers were scared last year because on the SAGE test, there were some students that were done in about 5 minutes because they just continued to click through the test. Well, that doesn't tell us if they're a monkey or if they're a goldfish, but it just tells us that the test wasn't that meaningful for them. And here's an example about why the right data is important. If you wanted to go to Farmington, you wanted to meet a friend at Lagoon for a day of fun, but you're not quite sure how to get there, and you tell Siri, "Hey Siri, show me how to get to Farmington so I could get to Lagoon." And Siri tells you that it's going to take 23 hours and 21 minutes. And we had the kids brainstorm about why Siri would be wrong, other than Siri is usually always wrong when it comes to directions, I have to say. But we talked to the kids about how there's 35 other Farmingtons in the United States, including the one in Michigan. If students don't answer test questions accurately, then when teachers go to look at the reports, they give students the wrong assignments and the wrong reteaching, and we don't want that to happen to our students. And so when we look at our SAGE scores, I want to flip over to this slide. This data is a year old. This is this year's fourth grade in ELA, English Language Arts. So our fourth grade students this year, this is how they compared across the district. So we have Murray School District here at 47%. We have our neighboring school, Grant, at 70%. Longview and McMillan at 60 and 67%. Horizon is a Title I school, and Parkside is a Title I school, and wow, you can see where Viewmont fell out in that. So when we look through these slides, you're going to want to take a look at this area right here and compare us to our neighbor schools, which are McMillan or like schools like McMillan, Longview, and of course Grant is very similar. Again, last year's third graders, this year's fourth graders, this is how they did in math. You can say uh-oh if you'd like. Our fourth grade reading scores. What this tells me is that across the district, we have a gap in reading. And even though Viewmont scored below Grant, our sister school, we outperformed the district, but I wouldn't say that that is a success story since the district as a whole scored at 38% in reading in the fourth grade. Those are this year's fifth graders. Again, last year's fourth graders, this year's fifth graders, 48%. But again, our comparison schools here, and here have outperformed us by 5 to 8 percentage points. And that is certainly not the picture of Viewmont that we want to portray. This is last year's fourth graders, this year's fifth graders in science. Again, 39% as a district. We beat them as a district overall, but our sister schools, McMillan and Grant, were hanging steady with, and Longview outperformed us by 9%. This year's sixth graders, last year's fifth graders, you can see how they did in reading. Overall, as a district, this was quite alarming. The students were very disappointed in their performance here. And in math, likewise, Murray School District is at 55%, and this year's sixth graders scored at 32%. And in science, we did pretty well. We outperformed Parkside, but you can see with our comparison schools that we still are not where we would like to be. Now, what this tells us, it's very disheartening for teachers because they're saying, gosh, we taught all of this, and I believe that they did. I believe that we have very strong teachers, and I believe that we have very smart students. What I believe happened is we didn't know how to take the test well. And so they're learning all of the right things. We're just not demonstrating that knowledge in the right ways. So I want to take us over to SAGE and let you look at some of these test questions, because it's not just about learning the right stuff. It's about thinking deeply about math and asking, they're called depth of knowledge questions, level 1, 2, and 3, DOK, depth of knowledge. And most of the questions on the state test are at depth of knowledge 2. Now, for those of you who are non-educators, when you and I were going to school, we solved math problems and we just did it the standard algorithm way. You know, you multiply the ones times the 1 times the 10, and then you add a 0 down below, and then you multiply the 10s times the 1 and 10s times the 10s, and you come up with the answer. You add those two together and you come up with the answer. And in SAGE, as all tests across the nation, they don't care about the right answer. What they want to know is kids' thinking and conceptual understanding of why those two numbers create that answer. So sometimes in SAGE, they will give you the right answer to the problem, and they want you to now say, okay, knowing this is the right answer, what makes statements true, or how would you use that information in real life? And that's what SAGE is measuring. And I think that's what we went unprepared to do. So if you wanted to do this at home, you're welcome to. You go to the sageportal.org, and you can find some training tests. If you go over here to the right hand side, you see training tests, little training wheel, and if you click on that, it brings you to this, and you're welcome to read this. This is about the purpose of SAGE, what things are tested, and in what grade levels. That's good information. But if you want to get right into the training test, if you click on that, and it might take just a few minutes to load, and it goes into what's called a secure site. I'm going to take you through a lot of clicks, and it might sound like frustrating. Your students won't have to click this many times. This is just how many times you have to click to get into the portal as a parent. So it does take a few minutes to load. And while we're doing that, I want to talk a little bit about SAGE and its implication on teachers. I mean, not only is that just a reflection of what the teachers did, the sad part about the legislation is teachers could potentially lose money if students aren't making the growth that they need to make in their academic subject areas. And for teachers, that's $4,200 of pay that is up for grabs now, where before it had been a part of their salary. They have their base salary, and then they got this $4,200 called their legislative salary adjustment. And so the legislator isn't taking away their base pay. Teachers' base pay stays the same, but their legislative adjustment salary, which equals $4,200 a year, could potentially be taken away from teachers if they're not making the academic gains they need to make. So that's why we love our teachers enough that we want to make sure that we're doing right by them and showing what we know on the test. And that's what we say all the time here at Viewmont, show what you know. So once you get to this page, it finally did load. You see this is for AIR, which is the institute that created the SAGE system. Go ahead and just click OK. You scroll down here, and if you see guest, you're in the guest portal. No big deal. Again, when your students log in, they'll come to this site, and we guide them through the numbers that they have to enter here. And they click sign in, and they're done. But for you, as a guest in this system, here's where you can select your grade. So if you want to select the grade that your student is in, you can see some training tests. So I'm going to select, let's go ahead and select 4th grade, and then just hit yes. And this is where it's going to take you through a whole lot of little screens. You can select whichever test you'd like to look at. So you can go into writing or reading, math, or science. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, start math for grades 3 through 4. I'm not real sure what all of this is, but you can go ahead and just hit select. And again, is this your test? Yeah, it is. And then go ahead and hit continue. It says text to speech isn't available right here, but yes, where parts can be read to students, it will be read, and there's an option available for that. In this case, it's saying for this training site, you don't need to have text to speech. So we hit continue, and my goodness, like I said, here are the little navigation buttons, but I'm going to go ahead and go to begin test now. And this is going to open up a test. This is 4th grade, and this is what the SAGE environment is going to look like for students. I want to show you some of the tools, and you are welcome to do this with students. These questions obviously won't be on SAGE, but it certainly lets students be aware of what the screen will look like. If your students say, hey, this looks a lot like an EDAMS test, then they're right. That's why we bought EDAMS. It very much mimics the SAGE portal, and the tools are very much the same as well. So we have a couple of options here. You have the question. Students select the right answer, but if they didn't know the answer to this, there's a couple of different tools to help them. If you go here, they can mark for review this question and then move on to the next question if they wanted to. I'm going to unmark this. You can also click on this little menu and do strike through. This is a great tool for students if we say, try and eliminate some answers, and then it at least gives them an opportunity to get some things right. So we know that 78 rounded to the nearest 10. 100 is going to be probably way too high. And 8 is pretty high, so we're going to take 70 out. Well, now we're pretty close to answers that we can use for our students. So that is the strike through tool that is available. We do have a masking tool here. It's to cover up anything that maybe you want to eliminate. Perhaps it's that you want to mask, or if there's information that you think is not pertinent, kids can go through and cover that stuff up so that they can just focus on the information that they need to have. There is a dictionary if you need it, and they can type in what is the tens value place. So type in the nearest 10 and click on the dictionary. And of course, I don't know that that answer or that definition is going to be helpful, but perhaps in the language arts section, that might be something that will be helpful. Being one more than 9. There you go. On notes, you can type in notes. Remember that 5 times 5 equals 25. If a student types that in, that's perfectly fine for them to go back and refer to if another question comes up. You can't leave those notes for students so that they could help cheat or anything, but if a student just has to get that out of their head so that they can cognitively think about other things, then they can write that down in their notes. They can zoom in and out of these questions so that they can see it a little bit better. And then this is how you go to the next section. So I'm going to answer this question. I'm going to go to next. I'm going to just choose a couple of things here and go next. And then here's an interesting one. This is use the connect line tool to create a rectangle with an area of 24 square units. So students need to know what area is and how they would come up with 24 square units. And so they would say, okay, if I start here, and then 24 square units is going to be 6 across and 4 down, or 8 across and 3 down, whatever that might be. And so then you would want to click, I don't know if I did that right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to connect our lines and create a square. This takes a little bit of time, and it takes some time for kids to get used to. So these are the types of tools that we want to make sure that we show for kids. That pretty much sums up this section. If you wanted to go back out and go into Sage Portal and choose another test, you're welcome to do that. A couple of things to look forward to, and I'm going to type these up here just so that I can remind myself too if you want to watch me do this. I am going to get dates out to parents as soon as possible so that you know when parents need to be prepared for when their student takes Sage. That means getting kids to bed early, making sure they eat a really good breakfast. You'll even get to know what time they're going to be able to take the test. And so if you want to opt out, you certainly have that right. But I do want to chat with you about that if that's something that you want to do. But that sums it up. But remember, we get it. There's a lot of tests, but we also know that your students have all of the tools and they have all of the knowledge. So knowing that, the test shouldn't be hard for them because they really can show what they know. This is their time to brag. Thank you so much for your support of Viewmont Elementary. Have a great night.